All right, it's the beginning of a new month, and that means it is time for your piping hot. And hot is indeed right. Monthly Bitcoin Digest. Today we are naturally going to fixate a little bit more than we typically do on what has been happening with all the price action. What might we see from here? And then we will not forget some of the very interesting tech updates that sometimes get brushed aside when the Bitcoin market is going bonkers like it currently is. You're not going to want to miss a thing. Let's jump in. All right, so again, for those of you that have watched the channel for some time, you know that I don't fixate on price, short-term price movements, unless it is instructive to understand what is going on behind the hood in terms of different market participants. And so while this month's digest will be particularly heavy in that regard, I think it is with good reason. I am finally back from Costa Rica. I was there for about a month and a half following speaking at the Bitcoin Freedom Festival in Uvita, which was a terrific experience. And so I know I haven't posted content in a couple of weeks, but I am now back. And so we are back on a weekly cadence going forward. But in that amount of time, a lot of things have changed. Bitcoin has absolutely ripped in US dollar terms to the tune of about 44%, even with the big crash that is unfolding as we speak today on Tuesday the 5th. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But that is absolutely bonkers. February 2024 was Bitcoin's best month ever on an absolute change basis. And so I think the punchline is a lot of people, myself included, I am on record saying a few things. One, I didn't think we would hit the all-time high until much later this year, in line with prior cycles. But it is absolutely mind-blowing to me what these ETFs have done to the price. And at this point, I think all bets are off. I don't think you could with a straight face make a prediction of where we go this cycle. All bets are off. What is happening now is crazy. So let's break it down and put into perspective what is happening. First, one compelling way to look at this is to look at the ETF inflows versus that of gold. And so what we're looking at here is a chart of, in the light blue and basically vertical line, that is the net Bitcoin flows, right? So net of outflows. We obviously saw a lot of outflows going out of things like Grayscale and into some of the other products, or just getting sold entirely, versus the inflation adjusted GLD flows. GLD being the main gold ETF that launched in 2005. GLD still to this day, I think, has the lion's share of the market, probably 65% of the market or so. And so basically it's just completely, totally astronomically ridiculous, right? The absolute pace at which these inflows have been coming in is frankly hard to put into words. I mean, you can just look at some of the mainstream news anchors as they cover this. You can see it in their faces, like they don't even know how to cover this. They don't even know the words to use to describe what is happening here. And by the way, gold did, I think, like a 3 to 5x or so in the ensuing kind of 5 to 10 years. So that is just completely ridiculous. Another headline here, right? GLD took 2 years to hit 10 billion. IBIT, which is the BlackRock ETF, did it in less than 2 months. So this is just a totally fundamentally different scale of activity. I'm recording this video on March 5th. That is important because things are changing very fast. But just yesterday, March 4th, we saw $562 million worth of net inflows into the different US ETF products, which in Bitcoin terms equates to 10 times the new supply coming into existence on average every day, which currently is about 900 Bitcoin. So we're talking like 9,000, 10,000 Bitcoin being sucked up every day by these ETFs versus the only 900 that are being produced. And that 900, of course, as we can see, is going to be cut in half. We will get to 450 a day in just a couple weeks in April for the next halving event. And for some additional perspective, we can of course compare this to prior cycles. As we can see here, I know it's a little bit fuzzy, but The black line there is our current cycle. And as we can see, it is performing better than either of the last 2 cycles. And after having touched above 69K earlier this morning, again on March 5th, we've officially re-hit the all-time high faster than the last cycles as well. So we are way, way, way ahead of schedule when it comes to cycles. And I think it just goes to solidify how all bets are off. That has been a pretty long-standing belief, this idea of like hitting the all-time high prior to the halving. Like, no way. And yet that is where we find ourselves. Will another one of the very battle-tested assumptions, this idea that every cycle we will get diminishing returns, i.e. lower percentage returns each subsequent cycle. My big predictions for this cycle is that we break that trend, but only time will tell. Now, what we also saw interestingly today on March 5th was a pretty big sell-off following the hit of the all-time high to the tune of about 10% down on the day at one point. And so again, for those that are newer to this space, what's happening there with those violent movements is not actually sort of organic selling or organic buying for that matter. That is typically the unwinding of leverage trades. If I'm like 100x long Bitcoin, I'm betting the price goes up and the price actually comes down a little bit and then I get liquidated, I have to sell Bitcoin in order to close my position, which only adds further pressure to that downward movement. And the reverse can, of course, happen in the positive upward direction as well. So it looks like that's what was happening. I think as people saw touching the all-time high, people were just like, all right, gig along. And of course, market makers see that there's an opportunity to make some easy money on dumb leverage traders. And so I'm slotting in this follow-up commentary the following day on March 6th as I'm editing this. And of course, you saw this in the screenshot just a moment ago. The price is already back up to 66, heading to 67. So one of the insights, there's really 2 insights here. One, do not trade on leverage. You're just going to get shaken around, right? Do not get lured by the belief that, oh, it's only going to go one way. And people are like, well, I could make even more money if I go, leverage. Like, it just doesn't work. Stay humble and stack sats, right? That's lesson 1. Lesson 2, it is rather alarming how quick we are bouncing back from some of these dips. I mean, the dips in February can't even be called as such. They were just little tiny things that got gobbled up immediately. And so I'm actually pretty impressed for like all the more trad money that's coming in via these ETFs, having seen that sell-off yesterday and apparently have not really batted an eye. And here we are having filled most of that gap already a day later. Like, that is just yet another observation that demonstrates how absurd this is. So where we go from here is anyone's guess. As Dylan points out here, the pretty scary fact is that after breaking all-time highs, Bitcoin has historically moved and moved very, very quickly. So that would be absolutely bananas if that were to happen. I personally think we chill out here for a little while in the 60s. I mean, we should acknowledge that there are a lot of different issues happening globally in the economy. You've got multiple countries outright in recessions right now as we speak. UK, Germany's heading into a recession, China's in a recession and has outright deflation. So like, it is looking pretty grisly out there in terms of the global economy. The banking system continues to have a lot of issues that are still somewhat hidden under the hood. But at the same time, I'm not holding my breath. And this is what I said in the last digest. You can't sort of wait for this like mega black swan back to 10K, 20K, 30K, 40K. Like, who knows, right? You just don't know. We could nuke down to 42 just as easily as rip past 70. And so I think the right summary is, as we can see here from Stack Hodler, right? He's saying lower down here, you're terrified of this dip. That's why no one will remember your name. That is absolutely true. Like, your entire lineage is at stake here. We are in this critical moment, all hands on deck. This is not a drill. Like, if you're not getting serious about Bitcoin, you probably are not going to make it. I'm sorry, right? And this is useful perspective. Stack Hollow, we were 51K a week ago. We just set a new all-time high. By the way, I've even caught myself at times thinking like, oh, well, here we have the passive flows. The passive flows haven't even started yet, because these ETF products are not yet actually part of the composition of funds. This is just people buying these ETFs, and there's no passive flows whatsoever. Can you imagine when BlackRock starts putting, 1%, 2% in some of these funds, and you start to get passive flows into it? Saylor and MicroStrategy are continuing their masterclass, what Jan here calls the fiat money glitch. Basically, what they're doing is they're issuing convertible debt that is denominated in dollars. So to the tune of 600 million in this latest announcement. They are openly indicating that they're going to use those proceeds to buy Bitcoin. Like, it literally says it in the prospectus. So they are outwardly telling the world what they're going to do. Naturally, over time, those dollar-denominated notes lose value versus the Bitcoin. The company valuation increases, as evidenced by the stock price. I mean, over the last month, MicroStrategy is up 130+%. So MicroStrategy is making every single other corporation look stupid. El Salvador is making other sovereign nations look stupid. BlackRock, Fidelity. Again, I'm not cheering for them, right? I'm not cheering for those types of entities to win. It is simply the case that they are smart and they are going to make other asset allocators and wealth managers look stupid. We saw Tim Buckley, right? Vanguard CEO for many, many, many years, announce his retirement, oddly timed to the explosion of these Bitcoin ETF products. Was that because of Vanguard's stance in preventing their customers from trading these ETFs? Or Vanguard, the king of ETFs, didn't even have a horse in the game. They didn't even launch a product of their own. That's certainly speculative. But guys, I have not in all my years in Bitcoin seen anything remotely close to the environment we currently have found ourselves in. I have been pretty conservative in past videos. I haven't wanted to sort of overhype the ETFs and things like that, but it is becoming increasingly clear that we have entered a fundamentally new paradigm. And so what does that mean? Again, never financial advice, but if I'm you, I am stacking absolutely every sat I can possibly get my hands on. If you have a business of any kind, accept Bitcoin payments. It doesn't matter if one person pays. Every sat counts. I've done a number of videos on this channel for how you can set up Bitcoin payments for your business. If you have access to uniquely cheap energy, I would be thinking about how you could potentially mine Bitcoin, even with the halving coming up. Again, that's going to be a small subset of you. But the fact is, you have to be focused right now. Do not drop the ball. Your entire family lineage from here onward is at stake in this very moment. Your descendants will either sing songs about you or will completely forget your name. This is it. And for God's sake, buy actual Bitcoin and take self-custody. Do not buy the ETF. Going back to something I said earlier, right? I am not rooting for these big financial behemoths to win because of Bitcoin. I am merely not surprised that they have a non-zero number of brain cells to have figured this out, right? Because there are all sorts of attack vectors that come with these ETFs. I think there's now over 1 million Bitcoin in all the ETF products and ETP products globally. So like all those, kind of financialized products. That's a lot of Bitcoin. And you could easily imagine some sort of an executive order 6102 style attack where the government just sort of nationalizes all the Bitcoin in these ETF products as part of some monetary reset that is going to be required to bridge from the destruction of, the dollar to some other world. Again, that doesn't happen anytime soon, I don't think, but just don't do it, right? Like, just buy actual Bitcoin and take self Custody, I have so many tutorials on this channel for how you can take self-custody. And importantly, like, don't rush through that process, right? Don't try and go out and create this fanciful multi-sig setup that's more complicated than you actually know how to use. Like, take your time with that self-custody process. Reach out to me. I am happy to help. You can reach me at vita.page/Ian Major. I have a number of clients right now that I'm working with one-on-one to help them set up a Bitcoin node, take self-custody, set up an inheritance plan, right? Like all these different things. Reach out to me on Vita if you would like some additional hand-holding. Don't get too obsessed with the price either. Don't be checking this thousands of times a day. Enjoy your life. Like it really does like rewire your dopamine if you're watching this every single day, all day. And don't get me wrong, watching my purchasing power increase is nice, right? I can better provide for myself and my family and those I love, but don't become obsessed by it. Develop your stacking plan, stick to it through the ups, through the downs. But if nothing else, my hope is that this video and all the evidence we see before us are heightening the urgency with which you probably want to try and be hitting those stacking goals, because they are going to get away from you very, very quickly. And amidst all of this, don't forget what this is about, right? Bitcoin is a means to an end. It is a tool. It is not the end in and of itself. One day, I too will hopefully spend my Bitcoin on things that I fundamentally need, whether it's a home for my family or whatever the case is. And don't forget the bigger picture, right? This is about ending time theft forever. You going to work, trading your time that you will never get back in exchange for something that can be created for nothing, to dilute the very time that you invested in the first place, is sickening. That is a sickening evil that we are purging as we get closer and closer to a Bitcoin standard. Again, we're still a ways away from that, but it's about solving time theft. It's about defunding evil. Look at all the conflict and wars and all your governments spending your money, killing people abroad. I mean, it's just a disgrace. And don't forget about the fact that Bitcoin is solving real problems, in addition to helping people preserve and even increase their purchasing power all around the world. We saw none other than the World Economic Forum themselves featuring the project in the Congo, where they were able to save this park from going bankrupt with the use of Bitcoin mining powered by their plentiful hydropower, right? So don't lose the big picture in all of the price action as well. And don't get complacent either. We have not won yet. But in any case, there you have it, right? Have your plan. Stick to that plan. Recognize that the time is now. This is it. Marshall Mathers once said, if you had one moment, would you capture it? This is that moment. All right, I'm going to end the sermon there. We haven't had a spicy one in a while, so I felt I had a lot of energy I wanted to get out in this one. I also wanted to close the video with some other highlights from Bitcoin tech. One of the really cool things that keeps catching my eye is the intersection of things like Nostr and Xiaomi and E-mints. We can see this really cool demo from Prism, where they're using a combination of Xiaomi and eCash a la Cashew plus Nostr to essentially create a Bitcoin wallet that's connected to just about any application. And so in this case, he's creating a Cashew wallet to receive some sats and then send them to a couple friends on Discord as an example. So if you're not subscribed, be sure you are, because Cashew has been on my list for a very long time, which is a particular implementation of a Xiaomi and E-mint. And as we learned a lot about the Lightning Network over this past year, and I've covered that in prior videos, I think there is still an open question of whether something like Lightning is the ultimate solution for like the final end consumer. Don't get me wrong, Lightning is fantastic for a lot of different things. Certainly business to business settlement, cross-border settlement. But in terms of like self-custodial usage as me, an individual user, like paying for stuff, there is still a lot to be desired. And so that's where something like a layer 3 such as Cashew could potentially come in. I think that's going to be a big deal as we move forward. I'm planning to do, now that I'm back from Costa Rica, a number of relevant tutorials for that space. And then building on what I discussed in the last monthly digest, the whole sort of whirlwind of Bitcoin L2s and EVM compatible Bitcoin sidechains and this and that has only continued to escalate. And so we spotlighted Cetrea in the last monthly digest. I think that's a really interesting one. There's other things, Bob, build on Bob from the makers of Interlay, and there's so many others in addition to the existing ones like Liquid, like Rootstock and Sovereign that more people are familiar with. But things are heating up, and basically the punchline in all of that is that Bitcoin, the asset, it's very clear to me now, Bitcoin, the asset, is going to reign supreme everywhere in crypto, right? You're gonna have other blockchains like forever. They'll never fully die. Like, there's never going to be a world where Bitcoin is the only blockchain in existence. However, it's increasingly clear that Bitcoin, the asset, is the undisputed king and is going to be sort of bridged or packaged or tokenized in whatever way. And again, there's always going to be trade-offs. And a lot of you listening are like, oh, I never want to do that. But there are a lot of people who do. And so in addition to the MicroStrategies, in addition to the Tethers, in addition to the BlackRocks, and the Fidelities, and the nation states, and the corporations, L2s are going to be another significant source of demand for Bitcoin, the asset, and is going to serve as essentially locking up bigger and bigger portions of the outstanding Bitcoin supply, which just plays back into this whole dynamic. So in summary for this entire video, we have crossed a line in the story of Bitcoin. For better or worse, right? I don't know yet. But it is certainly good for number go up. Number go up has typically been good for adoption. That is sort of the user acquisition loop. A lot of people come in based on speculation, and then they learn about this thing and they're like, oh my gosh, like freedom money. That's so much bigger than, number go up. And so I think we should embrace that to a large degree. But we have entered a new era. Make no mistake. A new era, both in terms of the adoption of the raw asset as well as all the people building on Bitcoin. Guys, holy smokes, I don't know what else to say, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What topics would you like to see now that I'm back, now that I'm going to be back on a regular schedule? Let me know what topics, tutorials, you'd like to see covered in future videos. Leave me a comment down below. But I hope you found this valuable and insightful. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like. Use the share feature underneath this video to get the word out that the time is now. People need to stop sitting on their hands if they are doing so already. And if you were so enamored with this content and you want to donate to a pleb, which really does help me to continue to make these videos, you can do so in a number of ways. If you don't want to part with your sweet, sweet sats, you can use the YouTube Super Thanks feature that's built directly into YouTube. Or if you are so generous, you can shoot some sats to my Lightning address, me@www.ianmajor.xyz. Or if you have problems with that, you can use ragermajor@getalby.com. I've also got this QR code that you can simply scan if that is easier. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you want additional hand-holding, if you're like, holy smokes, I need to finally get my act together and get my Bitcoin off exchanges. But man, some of these best-in-class hardware wallets are a little bit tricky to use. Reach out, or if you have questions about accepting Bitcoin for your business or setting up a multi-sig for your family, whatever it is, you can reach out to me on Vita. That is vita.page/IanMajor. Again, I'm always going to be as active as I can be in the comments here on YouTube and putting out the free content that I do in my videos. But as the channel grows, that gets tougher and tougher to do. And so Vita is really the channel to reach me if you have more in-depth questions, you want some hand-holding, you want some one-on-one mentorship, consulting, etc. But we'll go ahead and leave this here. As a reminder, every sat counts. And until next time, my friends, I'll see you then.